Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So big WTF news is that Game of Thrones season 7 and 8 might get super shortened, and Dan and Dave were originally not even thinking about doing season 8, so we gotta think this through. The big WTF is just the idea that they're going to shorten the last 2 seasons instead of doing like a full 10 episodes season 7, then another 10 episodes of season 8, meaning we would potentially be missing out on 7 episodes of Game of Thrones. Now this is just preliminary, nothing's been set in stone. Dan and Dave were just answering questions in a regular interview. They're like, well, we've been thinking about shortening the run a little bit. Originally it sounds like they were envisioning 7 seasons when they first started making the series. HBO was like, we want 10 years. George R. Martin was like, hey, thumbs up to that. I'm totally happy to have Game of Thrones on HBO for 10 years. Then this past year, at the most recent TCAs, the head of HBO was like 8 seasons. So it sounds like between all 3 powers here, George R. Martin, HBO, the network, and Dan and Dave with their studio all have 3 different ideas about how this is going to play out. Worst case scenario, they go with the shorter seasons. You think, well, we got all these spin-offs we can do, so they'll still be Game of Thrones even if it's not the main series. Well, HBO has actually clarified the spin-off talk. They said that there hasn't been any meaningful discussion because they need George R. Martin to be on board with it, and they would want Dan and Dave to participate in some way. And thus far, Dan and Dave are really only focusing on getting this season out and writing the next season. So officially, there's no spin-off right now, although HBO is definitely going to be pushing for that. But the way they made it sound is like, well, we have a number of characters that we could develop even more. So I actually got a little afraid and was like, are they just going to try and keep going forward with certain characters? I feel like if they're going to do a spin-off, they would have better luck going back in time and not doing the exact same characters that they did in the main series. But that's a whole other conversation, because if we really do get shorter seasons 7 and 8, what does that mean for the timeline? You really have to move everything up. Originally, what I'd hoped is that towards the end of season 7, Daenerys would make landfall in Westeros with her army, the White Walkers would bring the wall down, and then for season 8, you would just have like a season-long War for the Dawn as the White Walkers slowly destroy Westeros, and the combined armies of the Seven Kingdoms and Daenerys in the East try to stop them. So I still feel like, looking at what's happening in the trailer this season, Daenerys is going to spend most of the season trying to win over the Dothraki so that she can make this giant army. Then eventually she'll make her way to Westeros. But it seems like it's going to take most of this season to accomplish. But let me know what you guys think about this. We still get seasons 7 and 8, but they're just way shorter. They do the AMC Mad Men Breaking Bad thing, where they break up the last season into 2 separate seasons. It's almost like we, the fandom, are Oberyn Martell, Dan and Dave are the Mountain, and they are squishing our heads till our eyeballs pop out of their sockets. Oh, the horror. But the concession is that even if we don't get as much Game of Thrones, and they wait a couple years after it finishes to start a spin-off, we still have the books. There will always be some form of Game of Thrones content. George R. Martin will continue to write Game of Thrones, so later this year, we'll get Winds of Winter. Then, and hopefully in like the next 4 years, we'll get Dream of Spring, and then who knows after that. There's a couple more Game of Thrones books that he's been talking about, like Fire and Blood, the history of the Targaryen family. There's more Dunk and Egg stuff that he's been talking about doing. And then there's all the expanded stuff like the board games. So even if in a couple years there's no Game of Thrones TV show, I'll still be doing Game of Thrones types of videos, but they'll be more book related, more expanded universe. You get the idea. It's just kind of a bummer when you were expecting all this awesome stuff to be coming, and then someone comes along and says, no, you're only going to get about half of this. If it's not clear though, Dan and Dave haven't really confirmed what they're not doing. They're just said what they're thinking about doing right now. Like, we're thinking maybe shorter run. So they didn't say it's set in stone, and they didn't say there would be no spin-off. They just said that they're exhausted right now, and they only want to think about what's happening in the next couple of months. They're not ready to start thinking about what's happening in a couple years. So total episode count and spin-off to be determined. Because this really came as a shock and I just decided to do this video early, I'll still do another bonus video on Sunday. Maybe it'll be a Q&A. If there's any specific Game of Thrones video you guys want me to do, just let me know in the comments. And there is a new round of the giveaway starting now. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. I'll just announce the winner whenever I post that next video on Sunday. While you guys wait for that next video to post, you can click here for the last big trailer, and you can click here for the big Tower of Joy video that I did. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.